Here's a sneak peek from today's episode.
People don't want your perfectly manicured and polished end results. Like, that's not how the world works anyway.
Welcome to the Content Amplified podcast, brought to you by Masset. Our goal is to help you get more from your marketing content. Each episode is a 10 to 15 minute interview with industry experts that share amazing insights to help you squeeze as much juice from your content as you possibly can. Here's today's interview.
Welcome back to another episode of Content Amplified. Today I'm joined by David. David, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, David, I'm really excited because you have one of my favorite subjects we're going to talk about. And you've done the research, the homework. We're going to reference an article you wrote. This is going to be a ton of fun. But before we dive into that, tell us about who you are and your career and all that kind of fun stuff.
Yeah, I was just telling Ben about my meandering career and story before we started, but basically I started in consulting in the agency space, worked on brands like Coca-Cola, Atlanta Hawks, skin condoms. So I was doing all sorts of different things. After a chapter of doing that, I actually became a founder, started my first, second, and then third company kind of in 3 years time, and then moved on from that into, I guess, a large B2B SaaS company. So that's what I'm doing on the day-to-day as a director of product marketing. I actually work for a company that does church tech, which is, kind of an interesting niche in and of itself. But yeah, aside from that, I do writing like what Ben is talking about. I do art, I do all sorts of things, kind of tinker on ideas, but I'm excited to be here.
I love that. And I honestly feel like people that have a bunch of different interests bring the most value to like everything they do. Like whenever I hear, oh, I have this really cool hobby or this really cool passion that isn't just working on marketing or work all day, those are the kinds of people where I'm like, oh, I bet they have really good ideas. I bet they look at things in a good way. So I'm excited. Yeah. So David, you wrote this cool article about the value of research for a company. Now, we're not talking about the traditional term of research. Yeah. What do we mean when we say research? What do we mean by that?
Yeah. So the distinction I make is basically, companies do all sorts of research, whether it's like qualitative or brand research, or, they'll do customer research and, do these large quantitative studies or, whatever it might be. But what I'm talking more about is how do you position research, the act and art of research, as content and brand building in and of itself. And in the article, I reference a company called Story MFG. They're kind of like a more premium clothing brand based in the UK. And, they have their main Instagram channel. Obviously, they have their website, which they sell clothes and accessories and stuff, but they have kind of like a hidden Instagram that is not really well publicized. They don't really market it. But in there, it's all of this kind of BTS, it's all of this process related content about how they, messed up on certain garments, or how they had failed ideas, or how they even got to certain ideas that became viral, right? It's like the story behind the good ideas. And I just thought, okay, that is a really interesting act of marketing. It doesn't seem like marketing to kind of maybe followers or people that are paying attention, but I think, in fact, I would say it's like the best form of marketing, especially nowadays, where it's like people are, consuming short form content at a crazy pace, and there's a lot of quote unquote AI slop out there. But you can't really you can't make up failed accidents, right? Like you can't make up experiments or the documentation of it. So it's like really authentic. And I think people want that right now. I was like reading a stat about how luxury spending is kind of tanking right now. Like companies like LVMH and whatever are experiencing a loss. And I think it's because people are just buying dupes. Like they're okay with dupes, right? And I think that idea kind of translates even into marketing. It's like what stands out when everything is kind of like easy to consume. It's like, like junk food for content. And so that's where I went with the article.
I love that. That is so cool. When you look at it and all the research you've done and everything in this article, how do businesses kind of get on board with this idea? I mean, we have a lot of marketers that listen to this podcast. If they're going back to the company and say, hey, we need to show who we are.
Yeah.
In a very authentic way. We need to show up that way. And almost like what I love what you're talking about is in a vulnerable way, in a way that may not paint us always in the best light, but it paints us in the real light. How do you go about, first of all, convincing people in your company to do that? And then where would you recommend people get started?
That's a great question. I mean, like it's true. I think people, and I think this is a huge miss, that people want to do marketing maybe like how marketing was done in 2010 to 2014, where it was these perfectly manicured feeds and really well done videos or whatever. I don't think for the majority of B2B SaaS shilling marketers, I don't think they've left that paradigm. And I think, it's less about asking for permission and more about trying it and seeing if it works or not. So a great example of this, and maybe like a case study that you can say, hey, this is what gives us permission, is Anthropic. Everybody knows Anthropic. They love Claude. They had a recent tweet thread that came out like June 27th, where they basically had this experiment called Project Ven. And this experiment was crazy because they basically prompted Claude to set up an e-commerce shop and sell stuff for it. And I don't know if you saw it, but it showcased how it like messed up, like what went well, what went wrong, everything surprising. Like one of the craziest parts was like it had hallucinated that it was a real person, which is really scary, right? But they publicize all of that, and I think on the surface it looks like they're releasing some experiment results, but in my opinion, releasing research as branding, right? They're saying Anthropic and Claude, we are a company that does things that are on the edge, right? We do things that we don't even know what will happen, even though we're supposed to be the experts. And it kind of creates momentum, it creates progress, and that's what we really care about, which I think is quite amazing. And so
I
I
love
think,
that.
if you're thinking about, okay, how do I get permission? I think it is that people don't want your perfectly manicured and polished end results. Like that's not how the world works anyway, right? So I don't know. I thought that was a really cool example of it.
I love that. So even today, I don't know if you saw this, ChatGPT released GPT-5.
Mm-hmm.
And I just got access. I literally like put in my first 2 prompts right before we hopped on. I was really excited to go do it. But what I love about ChatGPT and OpenAI is they live stream and they do live demos, and like stuff breaks. And like even once during this presentation, the guy was joking about the idea of, okay, well, I did this presentation and I had to hide this error and stuff like that. But they do this and it's kind of like, hey, this is real time. We may not get the results we want. And it's kind of awkward sometimes when they're sitting there waiting for it to happen. And I think they like that. And they always introduce people, who they are, what they do, because I think they want that genuine, authentic connection with the business. And I think that's another great example of being able to do that.
With you. I think it's like we're moving from the Apple product launch to kind of more of this like real time, messy. Like there's something interesting about that inherently, which I think is true about like any kind of marketing right now. Like even if you're on TikTok as a brand or a business, like if you're selling HR software, how do you show up on TikTok? Right. And I think it's like the companies that do well aren't the ones that talk about their features and benefits. It's like they take on some other playbook, that maybe has nothing to do with their brand or their products or their features, but it shows some story, some human story that's messy and funny and, awkward, like you were saying. And I think that's kind of the whole point of this essay. It's like in this era where everything, you're not certain what something is, right? Is it AI? Is it not? Is it real? Is it fake? I think you kind of win by showcasing the rough edges.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, and you're right, 100%. As AI gets better, some of this video, you can't tell if it's real or not and all that kind of stuff. The differentiator will be the mistakes. Absolutely. Because humans will be more prone to mistakes than AI, and that makes it authentic and that makes it real. I love that. So what's kind of cool is we talk about this authenticity and it doesn't have to be over polished. So now, like, you got a cell phone, you got whatever, like, go make content. Any recommendations from what you've seen of like where to start? Like, who knows if you're B2B or B2C or whatever? Is it just sitting down with the CEO and asking for their story, or what? Any ideas about like how to start kind of showing this kind of content?
I was in the article. I had thought about that because that's probably what everyone was going to think. Like, what's the next step here? And to me, it's like you have to actually have some differentiated thing, whether it's a process or like a product or something that you do exceptionally well, and break down how you even got there, right? So, for example, like in the article I referenced, Story MFG's, they had a shoe release, like a drop, a collaboration with ASICS, and they talk about And I think the entire storyline was that they talked about how they partnered with certain vendors in, Vietnam or Indonesia, I don't remember where, and how they made the shoelaces, how they dyed the things. Like, it was all about what was hard to replicate from anybody else. And I think that's really what it comes down to is you need to sit down, think about your products, your company, and say, what would take other people a really long time to catch up to us on? Or what can other people not do easily that we can kind of easily do? I think that's probably a really good start. And not just show that, but show how you got there is probably what I'm thinking. And I think I also mentioned that where you put that out is important. I think maybe a lot of marketers would kind of default to saying, "Oh, okay, that means we need to make a blog about this and put it up on our website." But I would think like maybe, resist that urge and just throw up something kind of almost like disheveled, like a kind of a V1 rough edit of something, right? Like, I think that would actually do a little bit better than trying to get something really polished, like I was saying.
I love that. So something that comes to mind for me is this quote in Simon Sinek's one of his books about people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it.
Mm.
And when you're looking at it, you just mentioned this cool example about passion. Like, there's no way someone goes through all of this effort to dye shoelaces
Mm-hmm.
if they're not obsessed with
Yeah.
having this beautiful product exactly how they want it. Do you feel like that is kind of the main reason for the research and behind the scenes is to kind of discover the passion and the why? Or does it go in a different direction or even deeper than that?
I mean, I think that's a pretty good take. I would say, like, I've been seeing a lot of this idea around I think it's a meme. It's like, I'm not talented or I'm not intelligent, I'm obsessed. I think Virgil said that, maybe. I don't know. Or maybe Kanye. I don't know. Somebody said that. And I think that's kind of what you're getting to is like, and I think that's kind of the point is you can't fake obsession. Right. And I think obsession leads to actual innovation, actually interesting stories or products. And I think that's what I was saying earlier about find the thing that is hard to replicate because often that comes out of an obsession. Right. Even in B2B SaaS, it's like, we can joke about ERPs or HR tech, but somebody was obsessed with this kind of single problem and said, how do I figure this out? And I think that storyline is worth telling, even if the product is boring and nobody really cares about it. People will care about, oh, somebody actually cared this much about that. And it turned out to be some successful business or, outcome. I think that's kind of the point. Yeah.
I love that. And if you don't have someone in the business that you could put on camera and show that passion, you might need to find a couple people that you need to bring into the org
Yeah.
that
I mean, you have a bigger
bring that
problem.
passion to the
Yeah,
table.
exactly.
Oh, I love it. This is amazing. So I love all of these tips. I love the concept of the why. I mean, rather than getting into more tactics, which maybe we can do on a different episode, we're almost out of time. Any other examples that come to mind of like examples of things you've seen go really,
Yeah.
really well to like share with the audience just to get the wheels turning on this idea?
Absolutely. I would point folks to a brand called Craig Hill. They make kind of like small accessories, but if you go on their TikTok or their Instagram Reels, you will see some of these videos that basically showcase the process. So, for example, one of their pinned videos is how they reimagined the corkscrew to get corks out of wine bottles. And they said, it's basically this formula. What doesn't work about the current corkscrew that we've all accepted, right? It's uncomfortable, it's hard to use, whatever. And all of the iterations, the process by which they got to this actually incredible updated corkscrew. And that video has like 3.4 million views or something like that. And I think it's that very idea. They're not shilling the corkscrew that they made necessarily, right? But they are in a different way. And I think they use it as actually their paid ads and their organic content, which I think is like really cool and interesting. And yeah, I think there's a lot to learn from something like a Craig Hill, even if you're not a consumer product.
I love that. No, it's interesting. Just an example that I remember, and I haven't thought about this in a while. I'm not really a hardcore, like I don't play video games because I run a startup and I have no time for that, but, and have kids. And, what was interesting though, is back in the day, back when I was a young kid, I played these old games, like old computer games and loaded up on a DOS computer. And one of the original makers of one of my favorite games years later ran this Kickstarter campaign to make a game in that kind of style, and this was like 5, 6 years ago. And as a part of it, they shot a full documentary of the behind the scenes.
Yes.
Now, I bought the game. I played like 2 minutes of it. I actually don't care for the game in any way, shape, or form. I loved the behind the scenes because they would show how it was being made. They would show the struggles they went through. Like that was pure. Like I would have paid money to see that on Netflix over the actual game itself. It was such a cool experience that, again, like sometimes the behind the scenes is way more valuable than, what's in front of the, on the website and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I totally agree. I'll leave you guys with one more. Maybe it's by Huckberry, which is like another clothing brand, but they have a series called Dirt, which is basically, they work with this, I think his name is Josh, the host, and they go to all these different countries or places and discover, but wearing their clothes, or whatever. And it's like, it is kind of like an Anthony Bourdain, Parts Unknown type vibe, but for the brand. And, it's fully documented. They have a whole like production team around this brand, which is like kind of an insane investment. But to your point, I think I wouldn't have cared about Huckberry if it wasn't for this documentary, because I just love that content and storytelling. So I think I'm right there with you. I think a lot of people probably feel the same way.
And I love that it can scale, because I think a lot of times in business, okay, let's test it, see if it resonates. And honestly, as it works, it doesn't have to say like crazy raw.
No. Yeah.
Invest in it, put some money and time before, in front of it, and it can really turn into the whole story itself. I love that. This is such a cool concept.
Love it.
All right, David, I have loved this. We are going to link to the article that you wrote in the show notes. So everyone go check it out. I believe it's on your Substack. So go subscribe as well.
Thank you.
But David, for anyone besides the article in your Substack, if they want to reach out and connect, how can they find you?
You can find me on LinkedIn, or I'm on X, Instagram, all by David Kyle Choe. I am not the millionaire artist David Choe, unfortunately. Well,
we will link to everything so that everyone can find you. David, thank you so much for the time and insights. This has been awesome.
Thank you, man. Appreciate it. It was fun.
Thank you for listening to the Content Amplified podcast. Please subscribe and leave us a review. And for additional ways to get more out of your content, visit our website at getmasset.com. That's getmasset.com. And tune in next time to the Content Amplified podcast.